This video is a little late. Oh no. They're supposed to be ordered in the opposite direction. Get them now. Get them now. No! I'm just gonna take this as an opportunity to reorder them. Okay. These are all of the books I read in 2023. I'm missing 2 of them because I don't have 2 of them with me currently. I know that by the time I post this, it's probably gonna be July. All right, I've been wanting to do this since 2023, but I'm really only getting around to it now, so that's my bad. Since my books fell over, I can start at the beginning of 2023. And the first book I read in 2023 was actually the 7th Harry Potter book, Harry Potter and the Deathly Hallows. In 2022, I decided to reread the entire Harry Potter series for the 3rd time. I didn't quite make it all the way through within the year because I think I started in the summer. And so at the beginning of 2023 was the last Harry Potter book. Harry Potter lives rent-free in my head every single day. I try to convince every single one of my friends to read and watch it. It's an obsession that I don't think will ever go away. This book 1000% gets a 5-star. Harry Potter and the Deathly Hallows Part 2 is actually on my list of top favorite movies of all time, and because I think it does the book such justice. And I have like pictures of pages of this book in my camera roll from when I was reading it, from when it made me cry. Is that a red flag? Maybe it depends who you are. I don't know. 5 stars. The second book I read in 2023 is Colson Whitehead's The Underground Railroad. There's a lot of books in this stack that I read for school, but not all of them are super obvious. I feel like a lot of the books I've read in 2024 for school are a lot more obviously school. But I read this for my American Literature 2 class, and it was fine. It wasn't a difficult read, but it also wasn't like a mind-blowing read. There's one character that seems like he's gonna be really important, and then he like disappears for basically the entire book, and guess he wasn't very important anymore. It turns the concept of the Underground Railroad into an actual Underground Railroad. Like there's just a subway system in America for the slaves, and that's a really interesting concept. Although I think until I was in high school, I thought that the Underground Railroad was an actual Underground Railroad. So I don't know if that says more about me or my school system, but I rated this one a 3 stars just because it was fine and it was inherently good, but it's not my favorite genre, and I wasn't just like so excited to read this every day. So I give it a 3 stars. The third book I read was the second book in Twilight. I don't know why it doesn't have the cover on it for the hardback. I got it. Every single one of my Twilight books I bought at Goodwill because I don't think you'll ever go thrifting without finding a Twilight book. And I really don't remember anything about this book. Probably because all Twilight books kind of feel the same, but also because it just felt like mindless entertainment. I didn't have to think hard about anything to enjoy this book. Why is it so long? I don't remember anything we talked about in these pages. This book is like 560 pages and I don't even remember what the plot was. Apparently I rated it a 4 stars, so I guess it was entertaining. My list down here of everything I read in the order and what I rated it, just so I don't forget. This is my notebook of lists. I love lists. I don't have the actual physical copy of this one, but the next book I read in 2023 was Little Women by Louisa May Alcott. Little Women. I read this one solely because I've been wanting to read a bunch of classics for a long time. Specifically to just feel smarter in my degree, honestly. And so I decided to start with Little Women because I remember one of my friends in like 7th grade read Little Women like 4 times in 1 year, and she absolutely loved it. And then one of my friends now, shout out Bella, I'm pretty sure Little Women is like her favorite movie, or one of. And so I decided to give that one a try because I was like, if so many people love it, it must be really good. And it wasn't necessarily difficult to read. The language was just kind of flowery at times, which is fine. It also wasn't a book that I was always just like, oh, I need to read Little Women right now. But I did enjoy it because I find myself thinking about the book constantly, still. And I think that's the mark of a good book. If you read a book and then you're constantly thinking about certain situations in it and applying that to your life, then I think that's a good book. The lessons that the Little Women learned, I feel like I'm like attempting to implement in my own life. And at the time I rated it a 4-star, and I think that would still stand, but I'm wondering if it would raise in rating if I read it again, because I would understand it a little bit more, or if I just watched the movie again, because I've only watched the movie once, and I didn't love how it jumped around in the timeline so much. I like how the book started when they're young and ended when they're old, but the movie is all over the place, and I was really confused as to where everyone was all the time, especially because Amy was played by Florence Pugh the entire time, and Florence Pugh was the same age the entire time. She wasn't like 12 years old and then like 17 or something, so there wasn't a super obvious difference to me as to like where we always were in the plot. So I was a little confused, but overall I thought it was pretty good. And then the next book I read in 2023 was by far my favorite book of the year, but I don't have it right now because I've lent it out to like 4 people since I read it, just because I love it so much. And that's Tomorrow and Tomorrow and Tomorrow by Gabrielle Zevin. I don't even know what to say about this book. Basically, if you don't know what this book is about, it's about our 2 main characters, Sam and Sadie, and they meet in a hospital when they're super young and they bond over video games. They like play Mario Brothers together and they bond over that. And they become friends and they have a little falling out when they're children in this hospital, but then they meet each other again in college and they create a video game together. Am I saying too much about this book? I don't think so. But they create like a video game together, and the book doesn't necessarily have a plot. Like it does, because I'm obviously telling you what happens, but it basically just kind of spans their entire lives from when they're like, I want to say 7 years old to when they're like 40. And it talks about their interrelationships the entire time, and I just love that. I would definitely classify it as literary fiction, and I love literary fiction. I only realized what the definition of that was recently, and it's basically that the books are more character driven and less plot driven, and the genre examines more of like the human condition. So I would definitely say that that's what this book is, because we're just examining Sam and Sadie throughout their entire lives and their relationships with each other. And it's not a romance. There's like maybe like subplots of romance, but that's not the main point of the book. The romance in the book just like strives to make more points about their lives and their personalities in general. And I just love it. The ending. I want to talk about the ending, but I know that Hadley's probably watching this and hasn't read it yet. She's the one that I loaned it to, so I can't say that. But 5 stars for Tomorrow and Tomorrow and Tomorrow. I absolutely loved it. Why am I like crying? The 6th book I read was Ender's Game by Orson Scott Card. I had heard of this book before. I picked it up for my young adult literature class because we were supposed to read a book by an author that had won a specific prize, and this was one of the only authors that I recognized the name of, so I picked this. I think I learned from this book that I'm not a sci-fi girly. That's okay. And if you are a sci-fi girly, have this book. You can take it from, I don't want it. I gave it a 2 stars. It's like really not inherently bad, but I just didn't like it. Because I know it's just because I don't like sci-fi. Give me dystopian, give me fantasy. You can take sci-fi. I don't want it. It was just too, why are there politics that could be real in this? I mean, I guess I could say the same thing for fantasy, but also it's from the point of view of like a 6-year-old. And he's using way too big of words to be 6 years old. So this was just confusing. Next, also for my young adult literature class, I read Speak by Laurie Halse Anderson. This was an unexpected 5 stars. I rated it 5 stars at the time. I don't know if that would stick now. I would definitely say 4 or above though, so I'm just gonna stick with the 5. But basically this book, trigger warning, is about this girl in high school, or she's about to enter her first year of high school. She's about to be a freshman in high school, and it's summertime, and oh wait, is this a spoiler? Basically, she was at a party the summer before her freshman year of high school, and she had to call the cops for an undisclosed reason that I'm not supposed to tell you. And because she called the cops at this party, everyone hates her. Everyone is like, why'd you do that? You're a buzzkill. And she's pretty much just an outcast her freshman year, and she has no friends. She has no one to talk to. And she's also just like depressed. She doesn't care about anything. She doesn't care to maintain these relationships. And the fact that this book is called Speak is really symbolic, but I can't really get into it. But it's YA, so it's a really easy read, but it was also just really entertaining because I felt like the way that she spoke and all of her thoughts, because it was like third person omniscient, I'm pretty sure that's what it's called. So you can see all of her thoughts, and all of her thoughts I felt like really reflected my internal monologue. Like just the way she phrased and talked about everything, I was like, this girl is me. The next book was If He Had Been With Me by Laura Nolan. Technically, I also had to read this for my young adult literature class because we were just supposed to choose a young adult romance book, and we could choose whichever one we wanted. So I surfed BookTube for a while and found that Sarah Caroli had read this book and really liked it. She like cried, and I was like, wow, I love when books make me cry. I need to read this book. So I bought it, and for the first 80% of this book, I couldn't really tell you if I cared about this book at all. I didn't know why I wanted to pick it up and read it, but I was interested in the lore. But I think I can confidently say that nothing actually happens in this book until maybe the last like 30 pages of this entire book. Like the first 90% is just lore about Autumn's life. Because she's like, this girl Autumn is in love with her neighbor Finn. And they're like childhood best friends, and their moms are best friends. Autumn's with another guy for like the entire book, and so is Finn. But it's just her going through all 4 years of high school with like her friend group and her boyfriend, constantly thinking about Finn, being like, I wonder what would have happened like with this. And she like goes and has flashbacks of their childhood, and then she's like, oh, I wonder if this would have happened, if this would have happened. And like really nothing happens for the majority of the book, but I genuinely think that reading this book is worth it solely so you can just absolutely be blown away by the last 30 pages, because I swear to God, there's like 5 different plot twists that you don't expect. It's really easy read because it's YA. And also I lent it to my friend Hadley, and she left me a little note, and she was like, thanks for blowing my mind with this one. I remember I was at work when she finished this book, and she kept texting me as everything was happening, and I had like 30 notifications from her because she was just absolutely blowing up over this book. The next book I read was for my young adult literature class as well. Clearly you can tell that that's where most of this comes from, but it's okay. We were supposed to read a young adult horror novel, and we could choose whichever one we wanted. It just had to be young adult horror and released within the last 10 years. And so I blindly chose this one, The Taking of Jake Livingston by Ryan Douglas. And it's one of the worst books we've ever read in our lives. We both confidently gave it a 1 star. It was just like, it was so dumb. It felt like it, I don't mind, and most of the time I actually like when books like have some sort of agenda, because it's like, yeah, stand for what you believe in. Let's hear it. Tell me all the reasons you're right. You know what I'm saying? Does this make any sense? This one had every agenda you could literally possibly think of. And every agenda was like, pick me, pick me, pick me. But also, it just like didn't make any sense. There was no logic. Well, the story like made sense, but it just wasn't logical. And anyway, Jake Livingston is just annoying. So are all of his friends. Colin and I give it a 1 star. Then I read I Must Betray You by Ruta Sepetys. This one is about the Romanian Revolution. Could any of you guys have told me that there ever was a revolution in Romania? Because I didn't know that. And it was in like, I want to say like the 80s or something like that. But it's a young adult book as well. It's basically how Romania got out of communism from the point of view of like a 16-year-old. How old is this guy? Sorry, 17. This book was fine. It was educational. I feel like the best thing about it is the matte cover. Like it just feels nice. If you want to know more about Romania, this is the book for you. The next book I read was The Sun Is Also a Star by Nicola Yoon. I picked this one up in the first place because it was beautiful, because it has a beautiful cover. Also, you can like feel the indents of the words, and I love that. I rated this one a 4 stars. It was honestly just really entertaining. I just wanted to know what happened. Basically, the main girl of the story, I don't remember her name, but she is set to be deported at the end of the day. And so her goal is to like run around New York and try to figure out how to not get deported. And then this guy is supposed to be interviewing to attend Harvard, I think. Maybe Yale, I don't know. But they run into each other and it's a romance. But kinda. It's also a character study. I would say it's a character study romance. But it has a plot. And I think the plot is good. Unlike Tomorrow and Tomorrow and Tomorrow, which both beautiful books. But unlike that, which ranges like 40 years in one book, this book only ranges 1 day, which I thought that was pretty interesting. You don't find out until the very end whether or not she actually gets deported or not, because it's like back and forth the entire time. So read this book to find out if she gets deported. Yeah, I like the chemistry between the two characters here also. The 12th book I read was Simon versus the Homo Sapiens Agenda. I'm pretty sure I just said Homeo. Whatever. By Becky Albertalli. I had heard of this book a lot just in passing, and I feel like every time I went to the library, it was on a shelf of like, read me, I'm new and popular. So I picked this one up. It was honestly pretty good. I don't quite remember exactly what the plot was, but it was an easy read, and I feel like this book is good for gay representation, because I feel like a lot of books that I've read that have to do with being queer have to do with finding out that they're queer and like finding out how to deal with that in society. But this book was like, Simon's like, hey, I'm gay. I've been knowing that. I'm fine with that. That is not the point of this book. It was like, I'm gay. Here are some problems with my gay lover that already exist. And I really liked that, how he was already confident and fine with that, and the book didn't center around issues with him being gay. It centered just around a character that was gay and like normal life issues. So that's why I thought this book was good representation. Then I read Six Crimson Cranes by Elizabeth Lim. I had to read this for my young adult literature because we had to read a young adult fantasy novel, and she gave us 3 different options. I don't remember what the other options were, but I think one of them was like The Screaming Staircase or something like that. But I chose this one, and it has a lot to do with Asian folklore, I think, or like mythology. I don't think mythology is the right word. I think like folklore is the right word. Shout out Taylor Swift. This book scared me originally, not scared, but intimidated me originally because I had to read it during school, and it's really pretty long. It's 450 pages long. I was like, I just do not think I have the time to read this. And when you jump into a fantasy world for the first time, you don't know what the world building is going to be like. You don't know if it's just going to hurt your brain or if it's going to be entertaining at all. But this one was actually really entertaining, I thought. This story wasn't like completely over my head, and it wasn't completely new to me, I feel. Like the original premise of it, but the actual story was completely new to me. So I felt like I had some slight sort of background on this. But the sister to all of the Cranes, I feel like this just sounds so weird, but she spends 90% of the book with a wooden bowl over her head. And she's not allowed to speak because it's like for every sound or like word that she makes, like one of her brothers will die. And I think she has six. She has 6 brothers. And so she's trying to figure out how to turn her brothers back into humans, but she can't speak while she's doing it. And she has a bowl over her head the entire time. And I don't know if anyone else has experienced this, but I used to draw a lot. Just a few years ago, I would draw a lot. And I noticed at one point that every single time I was drawing a face of something or someone, I would be like mimicking the face that I was trying to draw on accident. And I noticed kind of a parallel when I was reading this book. She couldn't speak for the entire book, and while I was reading this, I was generally around like 10 other people. Like I was reading this around my friends while they were like playing video games or something. And 10's a lot. I mean, like maybe 5, whatever. But they'd always be having conversations and talking while I was reading this book. And I was so into this book that I just like forgot that I could talk. Or I just like found myself not speaking when I could. And considering how long this video already is, I think we all know that I'm a yapper. So that's kind of weird. But this book literally made me shut up because I was silenced. I was sat for this book. It was really entertaining, but it wasn't profound or anything. So it didn't give it 5 stars. I give this book a 4 stars. I think very deserved. I really like this book. The second to last book I read was All Boys Aren't Blue by George M. Johnson. I had to read a young adult nonfiction book for my young adult literature class. So I chose a memoir because that's the obvious choice. And this one is about George, who obviously is black. Look at the cover. Also, look how beautiful this cover is. I think this also gets points for beautiful cover. Figuring out that he was gay growing up, and then also dealing with that through his life, and just like different milestones that affected. And while this book was like honestly good and well written, I love reading memoirs because I just love hearing about people's lives. While this book was really good, I was just not the target audience during this book, because I think at one point it says like, and if you are also like a black gay boy, then I'm here to help you. And I was like, well, I'm none of those things, which I just kind of thought was funny. But regardless, I enjoyed reading it, and so I gave it a 3 stars. The last book I read was over Christmas break, and I read this solely so I could say that I had read more classics, and I read The Great Gatsby by F. Scott Fitzgerald, and I gave it a 2 stars just because I didn't understand what the hype was. Why do people like this book so much? I thought it was stupid. Rich people problems, champagne problems, however you want to put it. Gatsby's a little idiot. The only interesting part was when that one woman got hit by a car. Sorry if that's a spoiler, but this book also came out like 100 years ago, so whatever. Also, this book had markings in it already because I bought it used. So it was kind of annoying when someone underlined something that I didn't care about, and I was like, no. So it wasn't difficult to read, I just did not care. So 2 stars. That is everything I read in 2023. I'm sorry that it took me 7 months to get this out into the world. Here are all my books. Obviously we're missing Little Women and Tomorrow and Tomorrow and Tomorrow, But you can 100% look forward to a wrap up of 2024. Or if you hated how much I talked in this video, you can ignore that video in 6 months. But regardless, I like talking about books and I hope to do it more soon. Bye.